Many of our listeners feel caught in a speed trap. They wake up running, they work in a state of constant acceleration, and by the time they slow down at night, they're too exhausted to actually connect with the people they love. They know something is wrong with this pace, but they don't know how to change it, or even if it's possible to change it. Today, we're talking about why that exhaustion exists, what it costs us, and what becomes possible when we finally decide to stop running. Hello, I'm your host, Dr. Anthony Silard, and welcome to ReSocial, where we rediscover, reflect on, and renew how we approach social interactions so we can develop CMSRs, compassionate, meaningful, sustainable relationships. I'm very pleased to tell you that today we are joined by Carl Honoré, award-winning author and speaker, and a very close friend of mine, who spent his career as a journalist watching the world accelerate. But his real breakthrough came when he realized he was caught in the same trap. Carl's here to talk about what changed when he decided to stop and what that shift revealed about how we connect with ourselves and each other. So just to share with everyone here, Carl and I go way back. What is it, Carl? At least 15 years, I think.
I'm
And
gonna say at least, yeah.
we've broken bread and had long walks together on probably 3 continents at least.
Yeah, that's right.
And yeah, and Carl's been a real icon in my life, really about how to slow down, something I have worked on for a long time and I'm still working on. And I will never forget reading his book In Praise of Slow on a 17-hour bus ride in southern Argentina. And it just made such an impact on me that I ended up reaching out to him, and he was kind enough to be willing to talk with me and meet up with me. And since then, we've collaborated on a number of different projects. And I'm very, very happy that he's here today to talk to you, our ReSocial listeners. So, Carl, thank you so much for joining us on ReSocial.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be back with you, especially again.
Yeah, but the pleasure's all mine, man. I'm so glad you're here. So, Carl, you were a journalist covering globalization and seeing people exhausted everywhere. But the real turning point came when you realized you were doing the same thing, rushing so fast you couldn't enjoy your own life. Can you take us to that moment? What did you notice about yourself that made you stop and pay attention?
Yeah, I realized that I was stuck in fast forward and racing through my life instead of actually living it when I started reading bedtime stories to my son. And back in those days, I just couldn't slow down. So I'd finish my shift as a journalist, go into his bedroom and sit on the bed and speed read Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. So I'd be skipping lines, paragraphs. I became an expert in what I call the multiple page turn technique, which I don't know if you try and smuggle 3 or 4, but it never works, right? So our kids know these stories inside out. So my son would always catch me and say, "Daddy, why are there only 3 dwarves in the story tonight? What happened to Grumpy?" And this lamentable state of affairs went on for some time until I caught myself flirting with buying a book I'd heard about, a book called The 1 Minute Bedtime Story. So Snow White in 60 Seconds. And when I heard about this book, my first thought was, hallelujah. I need that book now from Amazon, drone delivery. But then I had a second thought, which was very different. It was a light bulb over the head moment. It was a moment of genuine and pretty searing epiphany. It's like an out of body experience. It's like I could see myself there from the side. And what I saw was just ugly and unedifying. I was racing through my life instead of living it. And I thought, this is insane. I need to slow down. And for me, that was the hitting rock bottom. That was the pivot point. And as a journalist and someone who's always interested in asking questions and how the big questions ripple out through the world, I started traveling around and investigating, and pretty quickly came across the obvious truth that I wasn't the only one who was stuck in roadrunner mode, right? That it felt like the whole world was moving that way. So that was kind of the start for me. It was very much a personal existential crisis that launched me into becoming the voice of the slow movement, if you like.
Yeah. And Carl, I always thought it'd be really interesting for someone to put together a play or a film where it's like kind of a tapestry of images where we think back to certain points in our life, certain times of when what we've gone through. And often there's like one memory that really stands
Mm.
out. And when you think back to, I mean, so here you are, you were a foreign correspondent for The Economist and all these other great publications, and you're just hitting the peak of your success. And can you think back, is there one memory where you remember going, okay, enough, I need to slow down? What can you remember what that sort of catalytic moment might have been?
Well, it literally was that bedtime story thing. When I found myself reading that newspaper article where I heard about the 1 minute bedtime story, I think it was in the Financial Times. And it was an article for fast people like me to go even faster, right? So I was in that very moment looking for a fresh lever to pull to accelerate even more. And I just caught myself thinking, wait a minute, what? This is nuts, right? A 1 minute bedtime story, really? And it was just at that moment, I was getting on a plane in Rome to fly home from an assignment. And I remember very clearly just being rocked to my foundations by the realization that I was trying to accelerate what should be the most relaxed, intimate, tender, slow moment of the day when a dad sits down to read a story to his son. I was trying to speed that up too. And I thought, I've lost my way. I've lost my compass. And I got on the plane to fly back to London. I remember very clearly, normally on a plane, the second the seatbelt light would go off and you were allowed to put your laptop, my laptop would be out. I'd be reading. And I just didn't do that on that flight home. It's about a 2.5 hour flight. I just sat there and did something I hadn't done for a long time, and which I think a lot of us have forgotten how to do, which is I did nothing. I just sat there with my own thoughts and marinated in my own, I'm going to say shame, because that's what I felt when I realized that I was on the
Mm,
verge of buying a 60-second bedtime story. And it was really in that. So the moment was realizing, catching myself thinking, oh, I'm about to, and I didn't. And then all the stuff that unleashed afterwards in that long flight home as I kind of got back in touch with myself. I think this is one of the things we sacrifice on the altar of speed is a connection with our own selves. We get disconnected from our bodies. We don't know what's going on below our neck. We're all up inside our heads. Everything's swirling around in a vortex of sound and fury and noise and speed. And we lose touch with who we are. We end up just living in autopilot. And it was on that flight home, I thought, I'm living in autopilot. And the mode of autopilot I'm in is turbo. And this is not right. This is not good. I'm not going to be happy looking back 10 years on who I am now and where I'm going to be for the next few years. So it was a real shock to the system, a wake up call. And I was never the same after that flight. That was where I didn't drop everything instantly, but I came to my life and the world with a fresh lens from that point. And that led me from my journalism into writing the book In Praise of Slow and taking up the whole mantle of slow and so on. So it really was a very, very simple, very human, very parental moment, right? Just realizing that you are shortchanging your child and yourself for what? To squeeze something else in that you won't even remember 3 weeks from now. It was that kind of, the stakes were that high.
mm. So here we are, everyone. This is Carl Honoré, one of the most viewed TED speakers in history. Carl has just done all these amazing things. And this real inflection point in your career as this award-winning journalist, and now you go out and you write this book on slowing down. So I loved this. I loved it In Praise of Slow. So really about slow cities, slow food, slow sex, slow walking, the whole list goes on. And you also, in traditional, what I call a Carl Honoré style, you started traveling the world and meeting with some of the leaders of these movements. And when you started doing this research, really this sort of global research that would become In Praise of Slow, did you really think you were going to find a movement at that point? Or did the slow movement just kind of reveal itself to you as you started traveling on your journey?
It was a bit of both. What was already there when I began my crusade or odyssey towards slow was the slow food movement existed, which of course started in Italy and is about, a better deal for Mother Nature, a better deal for us as humans when we slow down with our food. And that had been there since the late 80s, early 90s. And out of that had spun a movement called Slow Cities. But beyond that, there wasn't a whole lot. People certainly weren't using the word slow as shorthand for better, deeper, richer, more humane way of doing everything. What I think happened in the research and the writing of the book was, I think even towards the end of the book, I'm actually positing the idea, could there be a broader slow movement? Could this principle of slow be applied across the board? So it kind of came out of the book in a sense. The book kind of made the movement a movement. It gave it shape, gave it a word to hang on itself, because obviously people had been embracing different rhythms and finding what musicians call the tempo giusto, right? The correct tempo for the moment, which is all
Mhm.
very much slow is about. Because of course, I'm not a fanatic of slowness, right? I love speed. Faster is often better, right? We all know that, but not always, right? And that's the key to unlocking the slow revolution. It's about finding the tempo giusto, the right tempo for the moment. So sometimes fast, sometimes slow, and then all the different tempos and paces in between. And really, if you go deeper with slow, with a capital S, slow, it's a mindset. It's quality over quantity. It's being present in the moment. It's doing one thing at a time. Ultimately, I think of slow these days really as being doing everything not as fast as possible, but as well as possible. Very simple idea, right? But a game changer. Because once you arrive at each moment thinking, how can I navigate this moment not as quickly as possible, but as well as possible, everything just gets better, right? And you enjoy it more, whether you rattle off a few of the slow movements there. But it is literally in every field of human endeavor. You will now find a slow movement, from sex to travel to fashion to leadership to management to media to technology, everywhere, right? People are saying, how can I do this better and enjoy it more by slowing down to the right pace? So I guess what my book, the original book, When Praise is Slow, did, which has effectively become the handbook, if you like, the Bible of the slow revolution, is it pulled together a lot of strands that were out there in the culture, pulled them into a single rope, and put a name on it. Slow movement.
Well, that really was a tremendous amount of foresight to do that. It really helps to build and empower a movement by having something that people can refer to. It's kind of like, like Mao's red book, right? If you want to understand the slow movement, read In Praise of Slow. And that's certainly how I took it. Well, for our listeners, don't go anywhere. We're going to have a word from our sponsors. We're going to come right back. And we're going to also take a look here with Carl at how slowing down can positively impact your relationships. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Is there a protective shell around your heart holding you back from the connection you know is possible in your life? It's time to find your path to redemption. Introducing Love and Suffering by Dr. Anthony Silard. In Love and Suffering, which has received 4 book awards in psychology and mental health and 99% 5-star reviews on Amazon, Dr. Silard overturns what we've been told over a lifetime about love, forgiveness, acceptance, and gratitude. New York Times bestselling author Adam Alter calls Love and Suffering a compelling roadmap for a more connected and meaningful life. When you order Love and Suffering, 100% of the author's proceeds are donated to nonprofit education programs in Africa and Latin America. Invite more love into your life today. Love and Suffering by Anthony Silard is available now at Amazon.com and wherever books are sold. What if everything you've been taught about happiness and friendship is wrong? The artoflivingfree.org, the learning platform of the Center for Social Leadership, would like to offer you 2 free books by Dr. Anthony Silard: The Myth of Friendship, How Your Misunderstandings About Friendship Keep You Lonely, and The Myth of Happiness, How Your Definition of Happiness Creates Your Unhappiness. Get your free personal copies of The Myth of Friendship and The Myth of Happiness today. It's simple and easy. Go to theartoflivingfree.org/free happiness and friendship books and enter your email, then confirm the confirmation email in your inbox. You'll receive the links to download The Myth of Friendship and The Myth of Happiness. Enjoy your 2 free books by Dr. Anthony Silard today at theartoflivingfree.org/free happiness and friendship books.
Hello, I'm Dr. Anthony Silard, and welcome back to ReSocial. I'm here with Carl Honoré, award-winning journalist, writer, and one of the most viewed TED speakers in history. Carl, really happy that you're back here with us. I had a few things I want to talk to you about, but I want to go back to that moment of reading a 1-minute bedtime story to your son who's saying, hey, you're leaving out Grumpy from Snow White. So I've also had moments where it's like I'm okay kind of shortchanging myself, but I'm not okay shortchanging my children. And I wonder, was it that moment with your son where you're speeding up the bedtime story so you can keep moving in your accelerated lifestyle? Was it really that you felt it was not fair to yourself what you were doing, or that it wasn't fair for him and that you didn't want to sort of perpetuate to the next generation the same flaws in our own generation?
It was both, because one of the things that we torpedo when we get stuck in fast forward is relationships, and relationships are two-way, right? So people, if you pull apart or undermine a relationship, both people suffer. And that's definitely what I felt in that moment. My son was probably too young even to put that thing into words, what was happening, right? He just thought, where's Grumpy? But I, from my vantage point, could realize that I was dishonoring and diminishing something sacred, something eternal, something magical, which is that moment when a child sits down with a parent, the world around you melts away and it's just the two of you cuddling, telling a story, being together. That quintessence of a relationship, a human relationship, a human moment. I was defiling it with my speed and my impatience and my distraction. And so I was aware of it. I suppose my son would have been as well, but he couldn't have put it into words at the time, I'm sure.
Wow. Well, we're all glad you had that moment and that you made that change in your life, and also that led to changes for many people around the world in their lives. I mean, we've been friends for almost 20 years. So just remember through all of our conversations, so many stories of people from Brazil to Nepal to Belgium slowing down because of what you started, this movement. So let's talk about slowness as a form of power rather than a luxury. So, see, many of our listeners here at ReSocial feel trapped. They feel like their jobs demand speed, their families depend on their income. I think about one of our listeners who shared with me that he really can't untether himself from his phone or his screen because he feels like to succeed in his company, he needs to become the go-to person who's always available, constant connectivity. This is the kind of situations many of our listeners are dealing with. Is slowness possible for people dealing with these kinds of issues or struggling, or is it mainly for people who can opt out by nature of their wealth or their career?
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that slow, in my conception of it, is there for everyone because we all need it, right? So just the example of that person you said there who felt he couldn't untether from the phone. I would say two things. One, no job should be constituted in such a way that someone can never unhook, right? Because that's toxic, right? You may be able to pull that off for, I don't know, 6 months, a year, maybe a few years, but you are storing up a serious problem health-wise in the long run, right? That's just not sustainable over the long run. Also, you won't be able to focus as clearly. You'll make more mistakes. I mean, this is the thing. We lose all of this stuff when we get stuck in always on mode and go faster, do several things at once mode. We start losing our concentration. We make mistakes. We can't think as deeply, as strategically, as wisely, as creatively. So there's a kind of false economy about being always connected, being the person who gets back to every email or message within 30 seconds and picks up every phone call in the first ring. It gives you an adrenaline rush. It makes you feel important. It can be impressive, right? I mean, because in a society that places speed on a pedestal, the person who appears to be very fast can get a lot of status up front. The trouble is when you pull back the screen and see what's going on behind, you realize that it's not a long-term proposition, right? Sure, you can work a 24-hour, or not 24, let's say you can work a 20-hour day for a couple of days, or you can work 18-hour days for 5, but you can't do that constantly. You have to shift gears, right? That's just the essence of what it is to be a human being. Humans are not algorithms, robots, or machines. We are not built to be always on, always reachable, always working 24 hours a day. That's just not how we're put together. We're not wired that way. There are times when we can be full on, powered up, going all guns blazing, sure. But then we need also other moments when we just unhook, we switch off, we go into a place of quiet, we take down the speed, we remove the distraction and the stimulation, and we just stop being human doings and become human beings, right? We've been on an upward curve of acceleration, especially in the business world for decades now. And I think we are pretty much bumping up against the limit of what the human animal can withstand, right?
Like now with AI, of course,
Yeah.
I want to ask you this question. Where does the slow movement and AI intersect? Because there's business, there's also personal life. And I think what a lot of people are starting to do is when they have an issue, and whereas 15 years ago, they would call a friend and say, hey, I'm not sure what to do in this situation. Now they're asking ChatGPT or Claude because of their accelerated lifestyles. They're essentially having these sort of formative interactions more and more with a robot, essentially with AI, rather than with another human being. And if it's interesting, because if you look at the research on communication and authenticity, we have a need to feel that we're not just self-disclosing to another person, but they're also self-disclosing to us. Of course, when we're interacting with a bot, we know, hey, there's no honest self-disclosure happening from the other side, the other entity here. The other entity is a machine, right? I think it's this kind of depersonalization because we're not slowing down. But I'm curious what your thoughts are on it. How does someone who's trying to decelerate their life a bit, how can they approach the current new technologies that are just being thrust upon us?
Right. There's a few questions buried in there. So I'll
Yeah.
go back to the first one, which was about the relationships. This is one of the things I find most alarming about the rapid advance of AI. People are freaking out about lost jobs and all that kind of stuff. But I think it's what's happening in the social sphere, because there's a real risk here that we lose the thing that really nourishes us and makes life worth living and makes us human. That is genuine human relationships. Because AI can only ever offer a simulacrum of that, a kind of, photocopy, something ersatz. But it's very, very convincing. And it's also fast and easy. And let's face it, that's the way our culture inclines. And that's the way we as human beings, we're naturally lazy. If you give us the chance to offload any kind of cognitive effort, man, we're going to take that every day of the week. And it's the same with relationships. Real relationships take effort. They can be uncomfortable. There are itchy silences. The person might not agree with you. You don't know where you stand. There's friction, right? But Silicon Valley has been selling us this gruesome dystopic view of human relations, of everything as being frictionless, right? They want to remove friction from everything. And AI does that. It's sycophantic, it's obsequious, it tells you you're great. That's the best question they've ever heard. They don't put, you can ask it to push back, but by and large, it's a Silicon Valley approved frictionless version of a human relationship. And that's like a fast food high. Food is a good metaphor here, because I think that kind of relationship is like a fast food fix.
It also makes you less tolerant of these messy human beings, which is the
Totally.
alternative, right?
That's exactly what's happening. And you're particularly seeing this with children now, who are migrating en masse to having relationships with AIs. And it's because these are people like children who haven't built up the social skills and the social acumen and hammered those social brain muscles into shape yet. And they're being formed now in a world where they don't have to do the heavy lifting and put up with the awkward silences and all that stuff, the messiness of human relationships. So once they leave the AI moment and encounter a genuine human being, finding it very difficult. And that, I think, is something that we really ought to be getting on now, nipping in the bud before we end up raising a generation of, and not just, I don't want to put this just on children, because you can see this with adults and people our generation, right? Having relationships of all different stripes with AI. And it's just easy peasy. It's low hanging fruit. You're not challenged in that kind of relationship. You turn it on and off when you want. That's not a real relationship. It's fake. It's counterfeit, right? And
Essentially, it's the AI. Well, first it was just all types of technology. Microsoft Word, it was like commands. I command you to open or edit. So all of these softwares were essentially designed to meet our needs when it came to word processing or spreadsheets or visuals, whatever it was. But now it's also, hey, I'm having a psychological issue. And again, it's this other entity that's just meticulously designed to meet our needs. And then real human beings don't quite do that, right? They have needs too. And so it requires a lot more effort to have a real time relationship. ReSocial here, this is all about taking another look at how we can develop meaningful relationships. And I think we've got a lot of obstacles here, right? And I think slowing down, as you mentioned, it can really help us to say, hey, okay, other people aren't going to do exactly what I want them to do. They're not going to meet all of my needs, but there's something beautiful in each one of them that makes it worthwhile.
There's something beautiful in the work we put in together to build this thing that is going to hold us, rather than it's almost like an AI relationship is consumerism. Here it is on the shelf. I like the look of that one. It's shiny, it's new, and you pull it off the shelf, and it's a done deal. You're not making anything. You're just consuming it. Whereas a relationship is something that you're constantly building together. And you never stop
Co-creation,
building
yeah.
it. It is. It's co-creation. It's a journey that you go on together. You're always navigating and ducking and diving and compromising and getting into argument. Whereas an AI thing, all of that stuff is removed. So you end up with one tone. You get one layer, as opposed to a multi-layer thing, which is a human relationship.
Excellent. Well, love the work you're doing here, Carl. And definitely, I'm going to be asking you to come back soon because we have so much to talk about. Let's say for our listeners, where can they learn more about the good work you're doing to help us slow down and be more connected with each other?
That's very easy. I've got one website, which is just www.carlhonore, my full name, no punctuation, carlhonore.info. And there you will find links to all my talks, books, digital courses. I made a course for TED called How to Slow Down, which is now free online, so anyone can do it for free. So there's all kinds of stuff there, more than you could ever want to know about me and slow.
Excellent. I need to take that course. All right. Well, thank you, Carl. So you guys hear that? That's carlhonore.info. I'll put that in the show notes so you can access it there as well. The slow movement is about presence and intention, about matching your pace to what feeds your soul instead of what exhausts it. When we slow down, we become more genuinely present with the people we love. For compassionate, meaningful, sustainable relationships to flourish, we need to challenge the cultural myth that faster is always better. Carl, my day-to-day is a much better one, thanks to the connection we further developed here. I appreciate your message for ReSocial. Compassionate, meaningful, sustainable relationships cannot exist in a constant state of rush. They require what Carl calls the right pace. Not a slow pace always, but the right pace. We can change it. Carl's been changing it. You can also join with the slow movement and read and understand other ways to slow down. So, Carl, thank you so much for being here with us on ReSocial. I really appreciate you.
I've loved it. Been a real pleasure. Thanks.
Hello, I'm Anthony Silard, and thank you for tuning in to ReSocial. I'd like to ask you a question and a favor. First, the question. Would you like to leave some feedback and let us know what you've enjoyed about ReSocial and also what can be improved? Also, feel free to let us know about any kind of episodes that you'd like to have on ReSocial, any issues you'd like us to address. If you'd like to leave any feedback, please leave it at resocial@theartoflivingfree.org. Once again, resocial@theartoflivingfree.org. Now for the favor, please subscribe or follow. That really helps us to get top tier guests. So you're subscribing or following us at ReSocial makes a big difference. Also, I'd like to thank the ReSocial team, Madeline McLeod, our senior producer, Michele Bordone, our associate producer, and Ariane Escobar, our director of media relations. Let's end the way we always do. Until we meet again, please remember that between you and the CMSRs, the compassionate, meaningful, sustainable relationships you desire in your life, lies an invisible social barrier you construct in your mind. It's entirely up to you to push through this barrier and watch it disappear into the mist. Be the change you desire and reach out to another person. Then use the tools you learn, refine, and align with your own values in ReSocial to develop a CMSR. Be kind, be generous, and be caring. I'm Dr. Anthony Silard. Thank you for joining us on ReSocial. I'm looking forward to being together with you again next week in the world filled with CMSRs we are creating together.